Now, all of Christ's miracles up to this point have been for the good of people. His miracles have blessed and helped people. He's healed the sick, he's cleansed lepers, he's cast out demons, he's fed the multitudes, he's raised the dead. Here, for the first time and the only time, he curses something. He judges. And this shows us that Jesus has the power and authority to judge. He has the power of life or death, the power to save or destroy. In 1 John chapter 5, verse 22, Jesus said, "The Father has committed all judgment to the Son. Jesus will be the judge of all of mankind." And Jesus did not curse the fig tree because he was angry or because he was in a bad mood. It was a symbolic act. It was a symbolic act. In the Scriptures, the fig tree is a symbol of the nation of Israel. It's a symbol of the nation of Israel. If you're taking notes, you can jot down Hosea chapter 9, verse 10, and Joel chapter 1, verse 7. That's just two references of many. Just as the eagle is the symbol of the United States and the crab is the symbol of the state of Maryland, the fig tree was a symbol of the nation of Israel. Figs are listed as one of the 7 main crops found in the Promised Land back in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 8, when the Lord describes the Promised Land that he was taking the children of Israel to. He says, "For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of brooks, of water, of fountains and springs that flow out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees, and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey." The 12 spies that Moses sent in to spy out the land, I mentioned before, I guess maybe last week or the week before, that they brought back grapes from the Promised Land, Numbers chapter 13. Well, they also brought back figs from the Promised Land. When Israel prospered as a nation, their prosperity and blessing is described in the Old Testament as a time when everyone sat under his vine and under his fig tree, a symbol of prosperity. Throughout the Old Testament, the fig tree is a symbol of the nation of Israel. You even find fig leaves in the architecture of some of the ancient cities in Israel, like Capernaum, for example. So what does all this mean here? When Jesus came to Israel, he came looking for fruit. But he didn't find fruit. He found only leaves. And the nation of Israel had an abundance of leaves, but no fruit. What do you mean? Well, they had leaves. That is, they had an abundance of religious activity. They had the temple, they had the sacrifices and offerings at the temple, they had the priesthood, they had the different feasts and holy days, they carefully observed all of their man-made religious rules, they had their synagogues, they had the Pharisees, they had the Sadducees, they had the scribes. But all of that religious activity was just fig leaves. They had the appearance of fruit. There should be fruit here. They had the scriptures. God gave them his word. He entered into a covenant with them. He sent his prophets to them. They should have fruit. But there was no fruit, only leaves. And this reminds me of what Jesus said to the church of Sardis in Revelation chapter 3, verse 1. Revelation 3:1. Listen to what Jesus said to the church of Sardis. He said, "I know your works. You have a reputation of being alive, but you're dead." You have a reputation of being alive, but you're dead. The church in Sardis had a reputation for being alive, but they were actually dead. They were dead and they didn't know they were dead. They were dead and they thought that they were alive. They had a form of godliness. That church had a reputation in the community for being alive, an alive church, but it was actually spiritually dead. A visitor to the church of Sardis would see all the different activities going on in that church and think, wow, this church is really alive. Look at everything going on here. Look at all the options we have. Look at all the different things happening here. Activity doesn't equal spiritual life. Activity does not equal spiritual life. The church in Sardis had a reputation for being alive, but it was actually a dead church, just as the nation of Israel had leaves but no fruit. Jesus hungered for fruit. He was looking for fruit to satisfy him, but he found none. He found only leaves when he came to Israel. Turn with me over to Luke chapter 13. Luke chapter 13. And here in Luke chapter 13, Jesus tells a parable about a fig tree. And again, this is about the nation of Israel. Luke chapter 13. Luke chapter 13, beginning in verse 6. He also spoke this parable. A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard. That certain man would be God. The fig tree is Israel, that he planted in the promised land. A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came seeking fruit on it and found none. Then he said to the keeper of his vineyard, "Look, for 3 years I have come seeking fruit on this fig tree and find none. Cut it down. Why does it use up the ground?" But he answered and said to him, "Sir, let it alone this year also until I dig around it and fertilize it. And if it bears fruit, well, but if not, after that you can cut it down." And interestingly, a fig tree in the Middle East typically bears fruit in the first or second year after planting. The owner of this vineyard sought to find fruit on this tree for 3 years, and he found none. It's a picture, of course, of Jesus Christ. The public ministry of Jesus Christ lasted for 3 years. For 3 years, Jesus sought fruit among the nation of Israel, the fruit of belief, the fruit of faith. You know, the Jewish people claimed to be waiting for their Messiah, but they didn't receive him when he came to them. John's gospel said he came unto his own, and his own received him not. Instead, Israel rejected him as their Messiah, handed Jesus over to the Romans to be crucified. So after 3 years of no fruit, the owner of the vineyard says, "Cut it down." Well, why does it use up the ground? It's just taking up space and nutrients in my garden. So cut it down. There's no fruit.